Hello everyone, and very welcome to our last hour of Borås Textile Days 2025. What is the state of sustainability in fashion? That's what our next speaker knows. Dr. Ashim Berg is a fashion and luxury industry expert, advisor, investor, author, speaker, and founder of fashion sites. He's also dedicated to exploring and shaping the future of fashion. During his 24 years at McKinsey & Company, and 14 of those as partner and senior partner, he built and led the firm's fashion and luxury advisory and co-funded and edited the State of Fashion report. In February this year, he founded Fashion Sites, an independent corporate think tank focusing on advising top decision makers in fashion and luxury and conducting research on the ever-evolving industry. He is currently also writing a book. So please welcome Dr. Ashim Berg.
Tack så mycket för inbjudning, Git. Great to be here. I have a very close relationship to Sweden. So I'm married to a half Swedish wife and I have a mother-in-law from Göteborg. So getting an invitation to Borås is a great pleasure. And yeah, let's talk about the future of fashion and in particular the state of sustainability and where things are heading. I'll start a bit more broadly, and I'm going to narrow it down to circular business models and to resale in particular. Let's see how that works. It works, great. So, what's the state we are in? I think the unpleasant reality is that the fashion industry is a major contributor to emissions, to global greenhouse gases, and to a significant order. If we just look at CO2, it's probably 10% of the global emissions. If we look at the sheer volumes, we're talking about 100 billion pieces, and that is a doubling of the volume since 2005, so over the last 20 years. And also, if we look at water pollution, there's not too many things we should celebrate. So far, so well known. If we look at the outlook, it doesn't look like this is changing, at least not if we look at the predicted volumes that the industry is producing. It was growing at 4%. The global value of the retail or the fashion industry, it's expected to continue growing at 4%. So we are an industry that is, doing quite well, on the sales side, but it obviously comes at a cost. And the next unpleasant truth is it's driven by individual consumption. And I deliberately use the word consumption. And I did not tweak the data, but Sweden comes out pretty high when we look at per capita consumption. So the average Swede is buying and consuming 60.6 pieces a year and is expected to grow that by 0.5%. over the next years to reach 62 pieces by 2030. Germans are not, any better than that. I think the Norwegians seem to go into a different direction, but pretty much the only country in the Western world with minus 1.7%. And you also see, I think, the growing problem at the lower part, because emerging and developing markets are still at a low level, but are expected to steadily grow, because with growing income, also the consumption per capita is growing. And that has an impact. That impact is obviously that the global greenhouse emissions are expected to also grow at 4% and to reach new heights. and we have all the unpleasant side effects like water pollution and extreme weather effects that will come then as a consequence of that consumption, not only of fashion. So the other reality is, if we don't decide to walk around naked, we will always have a footprint, and a negative footprint, due to the way we get dressed and the cost that comes with that. So what do we do about it? Well, I think let's also here get a bit context. I think it started in the 1970s. That people created the first awareness about the impact of clothing. That was pretty niche. That was the days when Greenpeace was founded. I think there were some subcultures, the hippies and others in those days. It started to get a bit more interesting in the 80s. And it became, slowly but surely a topic with the growth of fast fashion in the 90s. That is when man-made fibers were introduced into the production process, which obviously has an even higher price than natural fibers. The topic really came to prominence in the 2000s led to the first global conference on the topic, which was in Copenhagen, which is called now Global Fashion Agenda in 2009. It took another 10 years to get meaningful commitments from the industry, triggered by the Paris Accord in 2015, the foundation of the Fashion Pact, and a lot of CEOs making commitments around 2019 and 20. So the topic is not new. Also, the fact that we have targets is not really new. So there is the objective to decrease global greenhouse gases emissions by 45% until 2030. There is the objective, which is broadly shared, but also far, far away, to become net zero in 2050. And there's also pretty much every company out there that has made a commitment until 2030, which is going to be interesting. So you see the announcements from 2019 on the right-hand side. The first companies, unfortunately, have started to take back some of those commitments and to declare that they will take a longer time to, do better. So, again, what's the issue? It's not awareness. Awareness exists for quite a while. It's not commitment, because also those commitments exist for quite a while. It is walking the talk. So, this is the German part of the presentation. Slightly depressing, glass half empty. Yeah, so there is some hope. I'm not American, but at least I have, spent some time in Sweden. So there's a more positive edge, to things. But it's also the reality that we are currently focusing. There is progress. Yeah, there's also lots of reports. This one here is from the Fashion Pact. That also states that we've mitigated 500,000 tons of CO2. In recent years, there is, an adoption to better materials. There is lots of technological development. There is, a belief and a commitment to reducing waste and overproduction. But I think the progress, it's probably fair to say, is relatively limited so far. So change is required. And I think if we look at the current state of the ESG or sustainability debate in the industry, it's probably fair to say that we're taking a pause. Yeah? When I interviewed the chairman of the GFA for my book, he said it's a healthy pause. I'm not sure he's right, but I think there's reasons for that. There is a macroeconomic reason for that. We have, many countries with low growth or no growth. That puts pressure not only on the consumers, but also on the businesses. We've seen growing inflation as a consequence, of different conflicts that we have. We have a lack of consumer sentiment to spend on fashion in general, independent on whether it's sustainable or not. because people are a bit afraid of the future, of the impact of AI, of macroeconomic and global politics, and they are keeping their money for themselves. We have consumers that have a attitude-behavioral gap. Yeah, whenever you do market research, and I've done a lot of market research in my life, also on this topic, you get the answers that you are hoping for. Awareness is increasing, people want to spend more, considerably, people are more concerned about sustainability. But the reality is, a lot of the good intentions are ending at the tilt. And, so far, there's a very small group of consumers that is willing, to make sustainable choices and to pay the premium that typically comes with a sustainable choice. And the lot celebrated younger cohorts in particular, have a pretty big behavioral, attitude-behavioral gap. You would just need to look at the growth of Shein in recent years from 4 billion in sales in 2019 to 35 billion in 2025, which is probably an interesting sign for that. We also have a political and cultural change. Wokeness, which was one of the drivers and the supporters for sustainability in fashion, is kind of out of fashion. We have a conservative government in the US and a broader conservative, counter movement that, proclaims drill baby drill, which is probably the complete opposite of a sustainable fashion. And we have the Europeans that used to lead the way on that topic, but who are now a bit hesitating. Yeah, some of the regulations get postponed, some of the regulations get, watered down because Europe doesn't want to pay the macroeconomic price that would come with playing a leading role in that situation. So that's the reason why we're probably, currently in a pause. And the consequence of many of the companies is that the budgets that are already agreed, get spent, but there is no acceleration. There is no increase, on the budgets that would be required. There's no shortage, of concepts. I think we know, how we could abate the emissions. We also know that it's a mix, of the production, the upstream production. It's a mix of the brand operations, and it's, also partially the usage and the end use that we need to address. That's a report that I, wrote in my McKinsey days together with GFA in 2020, and that is 5 years ago. There's also no shortage of concepts, and now we get closer to circular models, and we get closer to resale. Yeah, this is a framework from GFA that very much in detail, looks into what would need to be done in order to become more circular. And, also the benefits of being more circular are pretty obvious. It starts with, designing something that, is suitable for sustainable use, that has a higher durability, and you obviously would need to set up a system in order to make the industry more circular, still assuming the consumer wants that, which is, not a given at this point. So let's take one look into resale. And then let's connect that to Sweden and, what we all can do about it. I think the resale model, from 10,000 meters looks pretty straight. So instead of, one customer or one consumer using it for 20 times and then throw it into the bin and, ending up in landfill, the idea is that the product, assuming the quality allows, is passed on to a second customer, maybe even to a third user of the product. And the positive benefits would be quite obvious. Yeah, the cost of usage will go up, which means I think washing and detergents and everything, but you would only have the cost of production once. but you would share it by 2 or 3 consumers. And the idea is that this would lead to a CO2 reduction of 47%. If we move to a more circular, in this case, more resale model. It would also require, repairs and refurbishments and all of those topics, but it would be, quite a positive impact. And it looks like, good news, this is the Swedish part of the presentation. Yeah, good news is resale is growing. There is a very recent report from BCG and Vestiaire Collective that assumes or predicts that resale will grow to 360 billion in sales, which would equate 10% of global market share. That is by value. If we take volume into account, we're talking about 15 to 20% of the market that would be resale. And there is research supporting that there is certain cohorts that are already buying into it. And good news, the younger cohorts are in that respect. And why is that? Well, because it got rebranded. In my young days, it was called thrift, or it was called secondhand. Now it's called resale. It's called pre-loved. There's a whole branding around it, which definitely helps. And it got digitized. So we moved away from the stinky little boutiques or the Röda Korset places, and we're now presenting it digitally, hardly to distinguish from Zalando or My Teresa. And that helps. The consumer likes that and is buying into it, which is a prerequisite to get to a more circular model. But things are a bit more problematic. Yeah? The first one is that sustainability is not the main driver for doing resale. The main driver is affordability, followed by the variety of choice and the uniqueness of the pieces, and the fun of, and the thrill of the hunt. So only 40% of the resale shoppers do it for sustainability reasons, or at least partially for sustainability reasons, which is good and bad, because people, need to be motivated what they do. The problem comes then, right afterwards, because it could lead to overconsumption. There's a new study from Yale University that, at least sees a correlation between overconsumption and resale, because the fact that you can buy cheaper allows you to save some money, and that could lead to buying more full-price pieces. So, needs to be further investigated, but it's clearly not the sustainability idea of resale. And participation requires effort. Yeah, if you want to put things on Vinted, you need to do photos, do a video, need to describe the product. There's obviously Sellpy and Momox and other offers that help you with that, but that comes at a cost and reduces the financial benefit you have from that. Equally challenging is the business side of things. Yeah, because so far only the matchmaking of the big platforms, and in particular of Vinted, has managed to lead to a profitable business model. Yeah, Vinted got profitable last year by reaching scale, by not having the need to authenticate products, which you would need to do for luxury goods. That's the big challenge for the Real and for Vestiaire Collective. And there might be some niche players that are profitable, but so far it's only matchmaking, where you're only the platform to bring together the seller and the buyer. Brands so far have not found a way to deal with 25% gross margin if things work out well. And they have no incentive to do it if you are operating at a 90% gross margin in luxury for first-hand products. So what hinders us on the resale side is the fact that we have at best one business model that works, and we have a lot of others that are playing around with it. And that is what we currently see in most cases, We have some vanity projects, we have some marketing spend, we have a little bit of greenwashing, and we have, at least brands that are trying to find a way to make it work. But it's not scaling because of those obvious reasons. And there's also some hidden emissions in the whole thing. So if you buy resale and you have that lovely handbag and you have to have it shipped from Japan directly to Sweden, then the sustainable footprint or the sustainability footprint is also not as exciting as it should be. So you would need to have local matchmaking, and therefore going to a thrift shop in Göteborg is for sure the more sustainable answer to the topic. But the good news is the consumer wants it. So what does it mean for the future of sustainability if we focus on resale, and what does it mean for the Nordics? Well, I think we observe now a pivotal moment, which is quite comparable, or could be comparable, hopefully is comparable, to the 2010s. I think when e-commerce was hitting the industry, and on the left-hand side, you see that most brands were hesitating. I was listening in those days to the CEO of Louis Vuitton, and he was deeply convinced that online would never work in luxury, and if it would work, it would be at max half the size of one single store. Famous words, obviously he was proven wrong, but it took a while. I think we had first attempts of e-commerce already in the early 2000s. ASOS was invented in 2001. And many of the players, had started to offer e-commerce to a market that was not ready for it. Yeah, not ready because of logistics systems, not ready because of payment systems, not ready because there were no logistics that really supported it. But there were, new entrants, and there were analysts that were pretty excited about the opportunity. And that is what you see on the right-hand side. Yeah. So, and if you look at market cap, if you look at revenues and the development we've seen on that end, it's fair to say that some of those incumbents have come, got a bit into trouble, the gloom and boom of e-commerce, but there's no doubt that there is now 30% on average in e-com of the total market, and that every brand nowadays needs an e-com offer, with a very few exception maybe of Chanel, that can afford not to have that. But everybody else is participating in that. And that should give us some hope. It should give us the hope that if the consumer wants resale, the industry will finally find a way, because they actually cannot afford not to. Yeah, because if you think about it, if 20% of volume goes into resale, it would mean for the rest of the industry that you are only playing on 80% of the volume field, which is, tough. If you now add off-price into it, which is probably another 10% of the market, the full-price market is shrinking further and further, which will finally convince, that's at least my hope, many brands to not only test and to spend some marketing money, but to get real about it. Will it happen tomorrow? Probably not, but I'm quite positive that it will happen. And there's three models, of how that could happen. I think it's the trade-in and resale via owned channels. That is what Patagonia is doing. That is what Rimowa is doing. They basically take product, they refurbish it, they offer it like first-hand product. There's a second model that is, a collaboration between a platform and a brand. Yeah, so you don't build up, the own logistics and the infrastructure, which is costly and won't work for every brand, but you have a special relationship. So it's a bit what Burberry does with the Real. It is what Chloe is doing with Vestiaire Collective. It's also what My Teresa is doing with Vestiaire Collective. So you have an incentive to trade in, and you can, use that to buy on either the resale platform or to buy, first-hand products. And the third model is, to test this and to have a light touch and experimental approach. That is probably where most of the players are these days, if they are already at that stage. There's also, a technology hope out there, which is called Digital Product Passport. Yeah, it's one of the regulations that is currently, pushed back by the European Union, and there's also a risk that it gets watered down. But the whole idea is that you equip your product with a tech that provides data, and then you can use that data throughout the resale process. It's a great help for authentication because it makes it much faster, it makes it much cheaper. It would also be a great help to list your product because you basically only need to scan the QR code or the NFT tag or whatever. So the product would come with the information. And it would also have great benefits for the brands because it tells you, who was buying what, when he was reselling it, and it tells you, about, product features and other parts. So it would definitely also benefit the first-hand, products. And there's examples for that where this is, already working. Poshmark, Eon, and Coachtopia. Is one example. Chloe and Vestiaire Collective on the other side is one example. But without the push on regulation and without the technology, innovation and the scaling, I think it's going to be, it's going to be tough. But DPP is expected, to hit the market within the next, 2 years latest. And that should have a positive impact, for resale for sure, but also on many other dimensions. So what does it mean for Sweden and where's the opportunity? I think the good news is the Swedish consumer is much more interested in secondhand than, the consumers in other European countries. And, I'm working also a lot in the southern, part of Europe. And I can definitely see, a north-south divide when it comes to sustainability and also when it comes to resale. Yeah? So the consumer is much more open for it. The awareness is higher and the attitude behavior gap is smaller. And that provides an opportunity. I was also quite excited when I've done my summer shopping in Göteborg and compared this year to last year, that we have seen positive, developments on that end, and much more than I've seen it in London or in Paris or elsewhere. And what do we see there is it's not only, the typical thrift shops that you had anyway, yeah, but we also see now resale stores that, are more focused on certain categories, that are mixing first-hand product with second-hand product. So I have the impression there's much more exploration here. And the blending of the two worlds, I think, is another step to normalize resale and, to convince consumers to new behaviors. So I was asked by Git to come up with, some ideas and recommendations. I think, first of all, capitalize the fact that your customers, have a higher awareness and a higher affinity for the topic. It's much easier to pilot it here than to do it in geographies that have less affinity. Secondly, the focus needs to be on turning resale into a business case. Yeah, it's not driven by we want to save the planet and we want to do something good. It needs to be driven by a business logic. That is a prerequisite for scaling. You would only push it through, probably a difficult level of regulation. And I strongly believe that, and that is number 4, you need regulatory support. So the fact that already repairs are, VAT have only require half the VAT than other services, I think is a step into the right direction. There could be more regulation that incentivizes businesses to go into resale, brands to go into resale. Test and push pilot projects. I think what I've seen now on the high street, the fact that we already see it on the high street, should reassure us that there is opportunity and that the consumer is buying into it. And I think we need more cases, because fashion in general is not an early adopter and a technology-driven industry. It's typically more of a follower industry, and therefore I think you need some brave players, which I think is an obligation for the big ones, and the very innovative ones that also have a consumer group that is interested in the topic. And finally, supported with research. I think it's very confusing if you see the latest Yale results, and I hope, I think it's not where this industry and the consumer is heading, but we probably need more details, because one of the core problems of sustainability is the fact that it is a difficult topic. It's complex. It's not easy solutions. And resale was branded as sustainable, but if we look into the details, things are a bit more complicated, which means we need, ways of measuring the sustainability, impact, but also the progression of sustainability, and research needs to help us on that. Thanks a lot for your attention, and let's stay in touch. If you're interested in fashion science research, we would be very excited, but I'm also very excited to take some questions.
Definitely. Thank you so much so far. Thank you. Yes, so I have Louisa here on my right side with the microphone, and now we wonder, is there anyone who have a question or maybe a comment to what we just have heard? You're very welcome to raise your hand. There you have one from Nudie Jeans. Please tell me your name and where you come from.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I come from Nudie Jeans. I work with circular product flows, and thank you, Kim, for a very great, comprehensive and illustrative presentation. I was just a bit curious actually about one of those first slides when it came to sales per capita pieces, where Sweden was like in the top of those statistics. Is secondhand included in that? Yeah.
Yes, it's included. It's Statista data. So we check different sources. So you can always debate the way it's calculated, but it includes resale. It's a volume figure. It's not doesn't distinguish between the two.
Great, thanks. Just a bit curious about the scope.
No, and thank you for being one of the brands that is pushing it. I think I've also seen, your repair service in the stores, which is not a new thing, which started from the early days, and also the rack now with the resale products is probably a good way of testing it.
Thank you. So here we have another one.
I was wondering if
Excuse me, can you please say your name and where you come from? That's interesting for us.
I'm Robert. I come from here upstairs. I was wondering if in all of these data collecting, like design elements were ever part of it, in terms of it's all seen as a big thing, brands leverage affinity to resale and everything. But then I wonder, when designing, like I have a guttural feeling that a black jacket would be longer lasting in 50 years' time than a purple one. But then I wonder, like, do you ever consider that when collecting data? And if so, have you spoken to brands about it? And does that kind of go against the zeitgeist of fashion?
Well, I think you absolutely have a point. I think, first of all, if we want to have a more circular economy, if we want to push resale, we should also produce product that can be used for resale. And I think there's a lot of product out there, which is quite popular these days, that wouldn't, last for 60 wears. Yeah, so I think that one prerequisite is that it's designed in the right way. I think design also plays an important role when it comes to recycling. If you don't, have that in mind when you produce it. You produce a lot of complex products, mixed fibers, and everything that is related to it. So I think, of course, it's fashion, so design plays a role. You also make another great point, why it's so difficult for brands, to engage in resale, and why is Remova, able to do, operate Model 1, and why would Gucci have a big issue in operating Model 1, which is an in-house, model where you take back product, where you refurbish and refresh it, and you sell it. For Remova, it's relatively simple because they haven't changed their design. It goes back to your black jacket. In whatever, 50 years, yeah, it's an iconic product. And of course, they are happy to take back their aluminium, pieces and to brush them up because it's also great for the brand. It shows durability, it shows, the iconic style, it shows legacy and all of those points. If you are Gucci and, you have the combination of luxury and zeitgeist and design, and you have very different design handwritings for certain periods, it would kill you if you take back every product you've ever produced in order to put it on the resale market, because it wouldn't sell on the resale market. Which means, as a brand, you would need to be selective on what you are willing and able to take back, which is a difficult message to your customers. Yeah, because it basically said, oh, we told you this is the hottest, excuse my French, shit, when we sold it to you, but now we don't want to take it back because there is no secondary market for it. Which means for many brands, in particular, those ones that are more fashionable, Model 2, will be much more suitable because you basically incentivize your own customer to put it on a matchmaking platform. But you are not, taking any stock. You don't take, the fashion risk that you put out there. Hopefully, the growth of resale will not lead us all to wearing black jackets. Yeah, but design definitely plays a role in this.
Thank you. So, anyone else who want to ask something? Yes, we have up there. Thank you. Luisa is a good runner.
Yes,
Please.
hello. I'm Titi from Trash and Pattern. And I wonder, in the textile donation, well, people who work with textile donation, very often, well, there are a lot of them working for free and as volunteer and are unemployed but trial work and so on. Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that we do have too much textiles on the landfills?
Well, I'm not sure that is the reason for it. It's a difficult part of the industry for many reasons. I think a lot of, at least in Germany, you would have the German equivalent of Röder Korset, on the boxes, but it would be operated by a company that they have outsourced it to. So it's, and a lot of the stuff, would, not necessarily end up in a resale store, but would end up in a shredder and, would end up in landfill because the recycling quota of fibers out of fashion is currently at 1%. Yeah, so we also have seen, all the pictures from the sorting of those products, mainly in Ghana and in some other, African countries. So there's a lot of dark sides to this. I think resale tries to directly access the customer because they would look for the better quality products, yeah, and they would hope that they can convince people not to donate it to a box, but to put it in a package and to send it to Selfie and give you, an economic incentive to do so. I think this whole garment collection industry, which is a prerequisite to do fiber-to-fiber recycling at one point in a meaningful way, is currently not organized the way it probably should be. And that is, that's also one of those elements.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, we have there.
Hello, my name is Petra. I'm a designer, and I just had a question about recycling. I've been thinking a lot about the circularity of my product, and I was trying to find a way of like making mono fiber garments and thinking about the actual like recyclability of the pieces. But I do find that it quite often like compromises the integrity of the garment. So I'm wondering, do you think that it's smarter or more efficient to try to focus on a garment that is easier to resell or like has the quality and the integrity to kind of be passed down? And by focusing on recycling the garment, do I kind of tell the consumer that this garment is made to be discarded? Sorry, that's a difficult.
No, I would love to give you an easy answer to that question, and I can't. But I think it illustrates the point I wanted to make earlier. It's the complexity of the issue. Yeah, and it's the complexity of what is really more sustainable. And it's a great example. You know, should you design for something that is, you know, is resale and then after whatever 60 uses, you know, ends up in landfill, you know, but we've increased the duration of usage. We have replaced, you know, more first-hand products, and we have a positive impact. Or, you know, we go the other route of circular, which is basically you use it maybe 20 times only, but you recycle it in a simple way. And of course, if we would have a technology solution that at low, you know, energy usage and low cost allows us to recycle also blended, you know, fabrics, that would be great. But, you know, there's a lot of experimentation and not enough progress, you know, on that end. So I don't know, to be honest.
I was wondering if there are any like good examples of anyone who's doing, you know, mono fiber, having like the lining and the shell and everything they want.
No, and I think it's also the second part is also, I think people are willing to maybe make compromises in other product categories. I think there's a small minority of customers that is willing to wear almost anything if it is sustainable or has the highest, you know, share of sustainability. But there is probably 95% of the customers out there that would love to do something, but if it doesn't have the right silhouette, the right fit, the right quality, the right hand feel, and whatever the other features are, they won't buy it. Yeah, and given that fashion is still, you know, a way of expressing ourselves, you know, at least, you know, all of the awareness campaigns have not changed that. And therefore, I think we need to find solutions that, you know, are accepted by the consumers, yeah, and deliver against their needs, and that are meaningful business cases, because otherwise we have a almost esoteric conversation that doesn't, you know, lead to real impact and doesn't scale enough.
Thank you. I think we should wrap up. We have another one there. Okay, you're the last one. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Therese, and I'm from, I don't know, is it back? Okay. Yeah.
Oi, could you hold it just to she?
Is this working now? Okay. Yes. Did you hear where I came from? I'm from Ninjes Resale, and we are the largest resale as a service in the Nordics. And I just wanted to leave with a comment that we already give our brand partners 5 to 10% of their total turnover comes from resale. And in the upcoming years, we will see that we'll be growing to 15 and 20% of their total turnover will come from us. And on your chart of the different options, we would be somewhere in between, as we also cover the whole end of life cycle.
No, and I think it's an important step towards making it a business case. I think it works better in you know, value and the mid-market segment. If you are in luxury, yeah, and you are offered as a brand, you know, 10 euros on a handbag that is sold on Vestiaire Collective, at least at the moment, you know, people would start laughing and wouldn't do it. Yeah, I think the financial incentive needs to be high enough. And the current problem is that the business models are still working too well. Yeah. So if you have a 90% gross margin, if you have a 30% bottom line, you know, as a luxury player, you focus on first-hand products, and the incentive is probably not yet high enough. If you can increase that incentive, I think it's a great contribution to the brands. And if you provide the services that makes it easier for them, it's also a great step forward, because a lot of brands will just decide that this is not the core of what they want to do and what they are good at doing, and they would love to outsource it. Similar thing in e-commerce. In the early days of e-commerce, people were outsourcing the whole e-commerce business to Bertelsmann Group and others. Yeah, and only after it had grown to a certain size, people were taking it back into own operations and were dealing with it. So in that sense, I think it's a great contribution to make it viable, as a business model.
Can I add a thing as well? I think it's important for brands to look at the resale due to now that they don't only compete with other brands in the same category. Now they're also competing with their previously produced products. Their prices are being dumped on Vinted, which means that they cannot keep their full prices firsthand either. So they need to control their second-hand market to keep their first-hand prices in check.
I fully agree. I think it's a great sign. Hermes is the best example. If your product is so iconic and thought after, then the resale price is higher than your first-hand price. Great. But that only applies to very few players. But you're absolutely right. And I think there's other benefits. It tells you more about, which products are still selling, what could you, reissue at a certain point. It gives you lots of data and information. But at least the discussions I've been part of, the brands, this is a nice side effect. If the core commercial model, is not attractive, they hesitate to make the move.
Thank you so much. By that, I thank you so much for coming here to us in Borås, really. And you're so warmly welcome back, since you're a neighbor in Gothenburg from time.
I'll be back.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you so much to you, the audience, for being listening, for your questions. And thank you for being part of Borås Textile Days 2025. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll meet you again.